Welcome to the Creative REI podcast, your go-to hub for all things real estate, business, life, travel, etc. I'm your host, Dante, joined by my co-host, Ed, both real estate professionals on a mission to connect and educate. This podcast is sponsored by PropStream, the most trusted provider of comprehensive real estate data nationwide. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the Creative REI Experience. I'm your host, Dante Pena. This is my co-host, Edward Nava, aka just Nava, Eddie, whatever you want to call him. Today's guest is a special treat. Guys, he's a former CEO and co-founder of Koury Engineering out of Newport Beach. My man has sold his company that was making $30 million in top-line revenue every single year. And now he's just retired, chilling with all of his beach rentals, vacation rentals. My man, Richard Koury. Richard, thank you for showing, man. We need one of those buttons, huh?
You need a laugh track.
Richard, so are you originally from Newport Beach, or did you just end up there?
Yeah, I ended up there. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. It's a great place to be from.
Cool. How long did you live in Cleveland for?
Till I was 10, you know, 10. Is the story. I was, walking in the snow to school, uphill both ways kind of thing.
Walked 5 miles to get to school.
Yeah. Why Newport? What attracted you over there?
Well, I actually, my parents got divorced and we wound up in the South Bay, Hawthorne.
Okay.
I know Hawthorne.
Yeah.
LA County.
Yeah. And I had, in my younger days, my friends would say, hey, let's go down to Orange County. And they were really talking about Newport.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, it's
different
nice
life
down here.
It's a different world.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Compared to even LA though, right? Like,
I'll never go back. I mean, no disrespect to LA, but
all disrespect to LA. We're San Diegans.
Okay.
No.
So I actually was a single dad, and I took my son full time when he was 5. So I bought a house in Newport Beach, and it was the perfect place to raise him. The public school was very close by, and they were great. They were they cared. They were involved. They had the parents involved. It was a great place to raise.
We like Newport. We were just there.
So nice. Yeah, I love it.
We were just there, and Ed said something that really stood out to me was they really grind out here. How did you say it? You were like,
I mean, well, when I was word to word, I'm like, because we were talking about offices, of getting an office, so I'm like, man, I can really see ourselves getting an office in Newport because, it's very inspiring. It's very motivated. You see Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Rolexes. So I'm like, man, I want to be like that. I want to catch up. I'm going to work more and more and more.
They hustle more out here.
Right.
They hustle harder out here.
And I'm like, you got to keep up the payments too. If not, you'll end up in Riverside.
Or inland somewhere.
Right.
So on a side note, where what they call the liar loans. You ever heard of the liar loans?
No. What's the liar loan?
The liar loan was stated income loans.
Okay.
So you basically state your income to the loan officer. Hey, loan officer, I make $500,000 a year.
Okay.
And then put it down.
It's like the subprime stuff that was being
exactly
sold
what
back
it
in
is.
2006.
But you know what? My where I'm going with this is it originated in Newport Beach.
The liar loans.
Yeah.
Somebody came up with that.
Yeah. So
wow.
So really the subprime mortgages kind of originated, and what happened was, I don't remember the exact story, but Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were not doing a lot of loans,
right?
And when they realized that those guys were selling, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were selling those loans to Wall Street, to financial institutions all over the world.
Yeah,
new guys in Newport Beach just went around Freddie Mac and Fannie and just started bundling them up and packaging them and selling them.
Who was buying it? It wasn't Freddie or Fannie that was buying those loans, right? Or they were?
No, they didn't comply with their
guidelines.
With their guidelines. Yeah. So the problem is real institutions were buying them, pension funds, different organizations who were buying it were relying on those investment instruments to be sound,
right?
And they weren't, right? And what happened was there was Moody's and other rating agencies that were getting large fees
to rate them high,
and and they were getting these big, payments, millions of dollars to rate these.
Yeah.
And they just kept rating them, and they were just junk. They were
Yeah.
just junk. The lender, the original lender, really had once the loan adjusted, had no ability to pay it back. Like zero ability to pay it back.
The underwriting was probably non-existent almost. It was
they've stated, when you're doing a stated income loan, what's there to underwrite? They're just, you're just looking at, fake numbers on a piece of paper and going, yep, you're good. You got a loan.
So nowadays it's obviously it's not as similar. They're not just stating. I think right now is DSCRs with bank statements, right? What would you say is the difference between that and what happened back then with this? I mean, obviously stated is stated, and these are bank statements showing actual money coming in, right?
Yeah. That's a great question. For one thing, they're looking at the whole picture of that person. And like for me, they're looking at my whole portfolio. They're going, okay, this is a seasoned investor. He's got, beach properties. He's got a home in Newport Beach. He's probably not going to let that all go.
Right.
They look at my credit score. It's in the, 800s. They're like, okay, he's got this income. He's got that income. They're also looking at the property. Can the property, but more specifically, they're looking at, can the property, if it's occupied, can that income support the debt? They're looking at it as a standalone business. Does this business stay afloat as the property?
Right.
It is a business, and real estate is both a hard asset. You can walk up to it, knock on,
it's tangible.
It's tangible. You can touch it, feel it, kick it. And it's also a financial instrument. And the reason why it's a financial instrument, because of the leases it can attract, the revenue it can attract. So it's actually both.
Right.
So real estate guys who work on these loans, they understand that.
Right.
So they're not really worried about the individual, and then there's also, there is a little bit more risk to it potentially.
Right.
But that's why the interest rate is higher on those loans.
So let me ask you this, because you owned an engineering company in Newport for 27 years?
Yeah.
Right.
So just to be clear, I live in Newport. My office was in Chino,
California.
Chino.
Nice. Okay. So it's LA County.
Right. It's San Bernardino.
San Bernardino County? Yeah. Okay. I always get that mixed up. But so you had an engineering company, which it was obviously very successful. You did about 30 million in revenue a year. Did you know all this real estate stuff while doing that, or did you learn that afterwards? Like, where was the knowledge for real estate that came into you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I had known. I wish I understood it the way I understood it today, because there, and I had some people. I was in a wedding with many years ago with a longtime friend. I was in the wedding party, and his best man was an older guy. He ended up becoming my mentor about 5 years ago. I mean, this wedding took place 30 years ago.
Right.
And he was telling me back then, this friend of the groom, hey, you really should get into real estate. But I didn't understand the 5 levers that build wealth in real estate. 4 of them are working 24/7. Once you own a rental property, 4 of them are working around the clock. When you're on vacation, when you're sleeping, when you're sick, when you're working, whatever is going on, that is working for you.
Right.
And the 5th one works for you when you go to sell it and buy something else.
Right.
Okay, so for the viewers watching that might not know, what are those 5 levers?
Okay, so the 4 that are working for, there is 5, but there's the 4 that are working for you 24/7 is, number 1, you're getting income, right? Renters are paying your mortgage.
Your cash flow, right?
Yeah, cash flow. The renters are paying your mortgage, and they're putting some money in your pocket.
Right.
Right. After you pay all your expenses, they're paying your property tax, they're paying your insurance, they're paying your mortgage, and so income is one lever. Number two is appreciation. And I want to, if it's okay, I want to dive into that a little bit more. Depreciation and appreciation. Excuse me, I said depreciation, but appreciation. When you buy a property, you'll pay what they call a gross rent multiplier for the property. That's the gross rent you get in 1 year for the property. So, for instance, if you buy a property and the gross rent, this is before expenses, just the gross rent you collect in 1 year is $100,000, and you paid $1.6 million for the property, you bought it at a 16-time gross rent multiplier. Okay. And it's a rough number, but what you can do is look at other properties directly surrounding that property and see what gross rent multiplier they sold for.
So real quick, if I was watching, let's say, this show and listening to you about gross rent multiplier, how would you be able to dumb that down to somebody who might just be new to real estate and maybe like in more layman terms? Would you be able to, how would you explain that?
So okay, so if you get $100,000 in rents in a year, okay, and you divide it by what you paid for the properties, in this case, it's $100,000 divided into 1.6 million. That's 16 times.
Okay.
So the gross rent multiplier is 16 times. And you're like, okay, what do I do with that number?
Right.
What you can do is, before you even purchase the property, you're looking to make an offer, is you see what the purchase price is. They often disclose the rents, it's called the rent roll. And then you do the math before you even make an offer, and you look at what other properties in that area sold for. And generally speaking, they're going to sell for around the same gross rent multiplier. Some might be 17 times. Some might be 15 or 14 times. They might be less because the property's in poorer condition, right? So you're going to pay less for the property. But oftentimes when the property is in poor condition, they're also getting lower rents. Right. So that multiplier
also depends on the area too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Down by the beach, you could pay 23, 24, 30 times the gross rent. You know, if you get crazy with it, you can pay that.
Location.
Yes. So anyway, with that being, the reason why I drill down into that is when you add, so it's 16 times the gross rent, right? When you raise the rent $1, you added $16 to the value of the property in a selling
based off
price.
the gross rent multiplier.
Right.
So if it's 12, it's going to be $12, or if it's 20, you said 23.
It's $20 times 16, your gross rent multiplier. If you raise the rent $100 for, let's call it a 4-unit, okay, $100 a month for 4 units, that's $400 times 12 months, right? So 400 times 12, $4,800.
Right.
Now it's times 16.
Right.
Because that's your gross rent multiplier. So I don't know what that number is. Anyone got a calc real quick?
No, my phone's on live right now, or else.
All right, let me take a look at that real quick, just so you guys checking this out can understand what the pop you get on that. So 4,800 times 16.
Times 16.
You added $76,000 in value to the property.
Just by raising the rent by $1.
No, $100 a month.
Oh, raising the rent to $100 a month just now made an additional how much?
$76,000 in value.
Sheesh.
It's now worth $76,000 more than what you paid for it. Think about what happens if you do that for 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row.
And that's one unit, not...
No, this is 4 units.
4 units.
Yeah.
Per unit.
So if you do that for 4 years in a row, you've added $307,000 in value to the property without even putting any money into it.
Just raising the rents.
Just raising the rents. So you can actually force appreciation. Right? You have like some control over that.
Right.
Right? And we'll go back to the four multipliers that are working for you 24/7. So you've got income, you've got appreciation, which we just really drilled down into it. We've got depreciation. So depreciation is an IRS designation, and what the IRS says.
Disclaimer: seek a CPA. He's not a CPA.
Yeah, I'm not a CPA.
Not a CPA. Disclaimer.
This is what my CPA tells me.
Okay.
So let's say for round simple numbers, let's just say you bought $1 million property. Okay. And the IRS says, all right, well, some of it's dirt, so you can't depreciate that, and we'll define what depreciation is. Depreciation is the structure itself. The IRS says in 27 and a half years, the IRS is the one who picks that number, 27 and a half years. In 27 and a half years, that building's not worth anything. Right. It's not true. It's just a designation that the IRS lets you have. And so if you take $1 million purchase price, the IRS says, well, not all of that is a structure. Some of it's dirt.
Right.
So they'll let you take 67.6% of the purchase price as the depreciable amount. So you take...
It's like 2/3?
2/3. It's exactly 2/3. So let's take $666,000. Or you can go up to 67%. Let's take $670,000.
Right.
That's 67% of $1 million.
Right.
And you can divide it up by 27 and a half years. So I'm going to do that real quick, just so I come up with some real numbers here.
This is forced depreciation, correct?
This is depreciation.
So this is essentially, long story short, is allowing you to use these as write-offs towards.
Yes. So there's 24
the earned income. Is
right.
it the earned income.
So every
or capital gains or both.
If it's to offset your income.
Right.
So you can depreciate it $24,363 a year.
Okay.
So let's say you netted 24,000 in after you paid all collected your rents, you paid all your bills, your property tax, your insurance, your mortgage,
which are all written off as well. Correct?
Yeah.
Right.
And you netted in your pocket $24,363
without having to put the depreciation.
Yeah, this is before that.
Okay.
So you would normally in a business, if you owned a business and you netted that, you'd now have to pay tax on that $24,363. But because it's a property and the IRS has this depreciation schedule, so that's what it is, you now can take this fake number, this $24,363, and wipe out that income.
Whatever left the debt is. Now
you subtract it from your income on
less than $1,000 of income.
You have you have the. I use exact numbers of your income equals the depreciation.
Okay.
You now pay zero tax on that $24,000. In a business, you'd have to pay tax on it.
Right.
At least a third.
Right.
So now you'd be down another like $6,000 or something like that.
Okay.
Now you get to keep that $6,000. You don't have to give it to the government. So you get depreciation. Tax sheltered income is the bottom line. Real estate gives you tax sheltered income. Right. And anyone who's paid taxes, a lot of it, understands that's huge. Right. I mean, that's why you have, famous or infamous, Trump he only pays $750 a year tax. It's some minimum tax wherever he lives because he has these casinos that are throwing off millions and millions and millions of dollars of revenue, of net revenue, but he has these billion-dollar casinos that he depreciates and wipes it out.
It becomes a wash.
And wipes it all out.
That's how the rich become wealthy. Would you agree?
Yeah, but you can do this at a small scale.
Right.
Those same advantages are available to someone like you or me or
so
or
we're
anyone
doing
listening.
this with your properties that you have now, would you say?
I'm sorry?
You're doing it with the properties that you currently
Absolutely.
have now. And then you also mentioned something that really stuck out to me was you being by the beach. essentially forces your appreciation higher than normal locations because of the location itself? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if your rent multiplier is higher at the beach, let's say it's 20 times your rent, for every dollar I paid a property 3 years ago was 23 times its gross revenue, gross annual revenue. So every dollar I added to that, I added, instead of $16 on the first example, I added $23
Right.
to the value. And now I would say that might have even got, well, that gross multiplier, I think, actually went up because I've invested in the building and fixed it all up. Every
Right.
unit has been remodeled.
Right.
And that's a different way to get your multiplier up.
So, crazy story. How I met this guy.
Story time.
Story time. How I met this guy. I was driving for dollars. Okay. If you don't know what driving for dollars is, you're driving by, you see a house that looks like it needs work, like his was boarded up.
It's under construction, by the way.
It was under construction. It wasn't boarded up. It was boarded up. Well, it's okay. So he had boards on his windows, and I would drive by this property every single day. And I think I did it for like 6 months. And I was like, why is this house still boarded up? So I tracked this guy down. He was actually pretty impressed. He's like, how did you find me? And I was like, don't worry about that. PropStream, yeah. Shout out to PropStream for helping us find this amazing guy here. And we ended up talking. We ended up hitting it off. I ended up actually staying in the rental. And one of the biggest things that really stood out to me was he told me a story during 2020 where everybody was hurting during Airbnb during COVID. And let me tell you the story. Let you tell the story, because I like the story where everybody was hurting. Where did you thrive?
You mean when I opened up the
Huntington?
Yes.
You see, you had an Airbnb in Huntington. Yes. It was COVID time. Yes. Everybody that had an Airbnb was hurting because the occupancies were low. They probably lowered the rate per night, right?
Well, yeah. The during COVID, I have to say it was kind of rolling in because people just needed to get out. But after COVID wasn't officially over, but people kind of went back to whatever normal means. We really fixed up the places to where there's Tempur-Pedic beds. We have PlayStation and Xbox. They were designed by interior designers. Before we even furnished it, we gut the place, put in brand new kitchens, brand new bathrooms, brand new flooring, brand new lighting. The whole place has been remodeled.
Almost like a luxury experience, you would say, right?
That's exactly what I was going for, but in an apartment. Okay. Because, if you get a house with that same remodel and furnishings, it's going to rent for twice as much.
Right.
And there's a lot of people out there who are doing pretty good. They're probably worth, a few million or more.
Right.
And they all can afford a first class ticket on a plane, but they'll never buy one because they just feel like the value for the return on the cash they're spending isn't there.
Right.
Right. I can afford a first class plane ticket. I never paid for one.
Right.
I've used some points and done that.
We got free first class.
Yeah, but I'd never pay for it because I just think it's a waste of my hard-earned money, So
we're going to touch up on that after what you're done saying here, but I like I like where we're going with this.
So I decided that I would create a luxury experience by the beach in an apartment, and they would have the luxury experience at an affordable price where they feel like they're getting a great bang for the buck.
Right. So you sort of, in a way, as let's say a person that's looking at the Airbnb website, I'm comparing apples to apples. When, if one of your rentals comes up, it's like, oh my God, this is a really good deal. Or like, this is like a really nice apartment, studio. Like this must be like a hidden gem almost, right? Would you say?
Yeah. Yeah. And at this point, like one of the rentals has 121 5-star reviews.
Okay.
And
121 5-star reviews? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Wow.
And if you read the reviews, they're not plain. People are like, hey, if I could give this 10 stars, I would.
Wow.
Or this is the best Airbnb I've ever stayed in. I slept better in this Airbnb than I did in my own bed.
Right.
You know,
The mattress was pretty, like we stayed in it just to test it out. And the mattress, I had to ask him where he got the mattress from. And they're like that. We weren't the only ones to ask him that.
Yeah.
Everybody asked that.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, even the sheets are 680 thread count, and they're on the expensive side.
Right.
But the idea is provide a luxury experience, and the profit, it comes from providing a really nice luxury experience. If someone goes at it with, I want to make money,
cut some corners,
the guests will feel it in the lack of amenities, the lack of quality. The sheets are stiff and, you know, uncomfortable.
Right.
Even the toilet paper, like,
and especially
hurts.
for the clientele.
Yeah.
I mean, with, you know, the people with that level of status that could afford these places, there could sometimes be a little picky, I would say.
Yeah.
Particular.
Well, you know, their house is probably pretty comfortable.
Exactly.
And so they don't want to go to a place where they feel uncomfortable.
Right.
They want to feel like it's their second home. All they had to do is bring their clothes, their luggage. And that's what they say. They said, I just feel like I went to a high-end friend's house.
Right.
And just spent a couple of nights there.
Right.
And that's the experience we want. You know, the kitchens are fully equipped for anyone who wants to, like, you know, some people are foodies and love to cook for their family, and everything is there. Just everything they need.
Awesome.
We even provide blow dryers, curling irons, and hair straighteners in the bathrooms. We have first aid kits in the kitchen, underneath the sink, and in the bathrooms, and it's labeled. And you know, just high end finishes, and even the couch. It's a pull out couch, you know, sleeper.
Okay.
It's a Tempur-Pedic foam
Tempur-Pedic
mattress
in the couch.
Yeah, and
Nice.
and they're expensive as heck, but they're a one-time cost. But I want the person sleeping on the couch to have the same, you know, to close the same experience the person sleeping in the master bedroom.
Definitely.
We want everyone to walk away going, man, I slept great.
Right.
Would you
You know?
say that you took how you want your experience for Airbnb with your previous business? Is that maybe where you got those ideas? Because you're very, very keen on almost like thinking as if you were the customer yourself and what you would like. And it just seems like that rolls on with other people.
Yes.
Okay.
So at Koury Engineering, we had just a phenomenal team, very sharp people with a lot of energy, and just, I got to be honest, they were way smarter than I was.
Right.
That's why they were there. And we always, you know, strive to improve 1% every day. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it has a cumulative effect.
Okay.
And so we kept looking at ways to not only, you know, work in the business, but improve the business. How can we make things cheaper, better, faster for the customer, for the client? And you know, we got to that point. We hired third parties because we didn't know where we stood in the industry.
Right.
And so we hired third parties to go out and survey our customers, and our customers had all used our competitors.
Okay.
Right.
And you know, we were shocked with the feedback. You know, they'd say something like, we're the best engineering firm they've used in the past 10 years. You know, and it's the little things that cause clients of these, developers headaches. When you get an invoice that's $200,000 and there's 1,000 line items on it, you're like, it better be accurate. If it doesn't make sense, they're just going to get so frustrated because they've got a million other things to worry about when they're building a big project.
Right.
The one thing they want is just accurate billing so they can look at it, approve it, and move on.
Right.
And you know, the field people have to be professional and look out for their interests. We had a lot of 120 field people.
Wow.
But we were the first ones, as low tech as this was, we were the first ones in that industry for field people to go electronic. And what was great about that was people would our field people would email the electronic report in, and then it would go into a folder, and then my quality control manager would open up that folder the next morning and as they QC'd it, would move it into, if it QC'd, if it's all right, he'd move it into accounting folder, and an accounting would open up the accounting folder and just start the billing.
Right.
And they'd get the billing on the first of the month.
When you say, would you say technology? How did you say you were one of the first companies that
started doing paperless reports?
Paperless,
yeah.
okay.
Today it's not a big deal.
Right. It's like the norm.
It's like the norm now. They followed after us.
Right.
But we were doing it, and we didn't get real technical and create this whole software. We just used PDFs.
Quick, simple switch.
Yeah.
I like the idea how, you applied the same business model into, your short-term rentals.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Very technical, very...
Concepts are the same.
Yes.
If you will. Different scenario, though.
Yeah. We have electric bikes for our guests.
Oh, right.
They do rent those. If they want that, so they're locked, and there's a Venmo, QR card.
The Venmo and the unlocks
they pay them.
the bike.
We email them the code, and then they unlock it. But they sign the waiver on DocuSign. We send it to their phone.
Wow.
They look at it.
So seamless.
And you want to reduce that friction point of sale.
Exactly.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. And so, just guess, and we have keyless entries. People, we use the last four of their cell number as the entry to their. They'll never forget it, and it's theirs. And so, people don't need to fumble with a key or keep track of a key or share it with.
Came in handy when we did the keypad all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just looked at all those points of potential friction, and I said, well, what's out there already that exists that can remove that friction from that particular point? And then we applied it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we use really nice shampoo and hand soap where people are like, where did you get this stuff? So we want, people to feel like they got a luxury experience, and that's what they get. And then they feel like it was worth it.
Right.
And so we have people, coming back 4 or 5 times.
Now, do you only market yourself on Airbnb, or do you use other third parties, or how do you?
Yeah, so we have our own website.
What's the website?
Stellar Stays.
Stellar Stays, okay.
Stellarstays.com?
It's stellarstaysllc.com.
How do you spell it?
STELLAR.
Okay.
Why am I getting?
we'll have the website.
We'll probably put it in the link in bio.
Yeah.
Stellar Stays.
Okay, so if they want to go
and book off of
Stays,
Airbnb. Yeah.
Stays STAYZLLC.com.
Awesome.
I figured there was a certain way to spell
yeah,
it.
yeah, there's a little trick to it. I'm like, my wife came up with it, and she works with the name every day. I don't really think about
it's
it.
Stellar name, yeah.
Stellar Stays with a Z. Stellar Stays with a Z.
So I know you briefly mentioned your company, Koury Engineering. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Just the people that don't really know.
What exactly did y'all do? Were you guys like software engineers? Were you like what kind of engineering did you do?
We were geotechnical engineers. It's soils mechanics. So think about, you just bought this land, there's no building on it, or there could be a building and they scraped it.
Okay.
Right. You're going to put an office building or, a Target,
right.
Well, you have to know what kind of soil you have. They know by the size of the project they're going to build, they know how much the building's going to weigh.
Right.
But they need to know, can this soil support that weight? Is it sand? Is it silt? Is it clay? Does it expand when water hits it from rain? Does it collapse when water hits it from rain? Is it on a near a fault line?
Okay.
Is it liquefy? It actually, some soil actually liquefies during an earthquake. And so all those properties have to be tested, and then you have to find what they call the bearing capacity of that soil. And then you have to compare it to the weight of the building. It's a 5-story building. It's going to be concrete. Right. They actually know what that's going to weigh.
So it's like a soil.
It's a soils investigation.
So you guys did like soil tests?
Soil tests that end up being a soils report.
Okay.
And then that was given to the structural engineer who's going to design
Okay.
all the columns, the foundations,
Right.
right? So
Which they work with the architect. I'm learning that because we're dealing with that, with getting this thing up to code. So you're the soils test and a bunch of other tests, or just soils tests, or?
Yeah. So there's borings, and they bore down in multiple locations on that site.
Mm-hmm.
And then they pull up, these tubes of soil, and there's a guy there marking every 12 inches of for chain of custody of the depth.
Okay.
So that we can put it in a chart, right? 20 feet down, there's a water table there,
right?
So these are all things that
water table being like groundwater, like for a well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So these are all things that they need to know before they go into the structural design of the building. If the soil doesn't have a high bearing capacity,
right,
then they've got to make the foundations much bigger. Well, the challenge with that is that costs a lot more.
Right.
So then that stuff all has to be done in advance, so the owner can go, hey, wait a minute, this building is now $1 million more. It was right at penciling out at before this $1 million was cost of added.
Or maybe their profits are getting eaten up now.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Their profit is going to get eaten up.
Yeah.
So they'll look at some ways to cut those costs while keeping the integrity, the strength of the building, to try and keep the project alive. Or they may just go, this isn't feasible on this particular dirt.
Right.
So they'll cancel the project.
I know. Talking about it briefly with you, you guys also were able to detect it, detect utilities. Is that correct?
Yeah. So there was, within the $30 million a year in business, there was three entities that operated. One was the engineering company that we just talked about.
Right.
The second one was, we located and mapped out underground live utilities.
Nice.
That was a big one. There's a lot of financial cost to hitting live utilities.
Right.
And
like if you hit a pipe,
a live water line.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also dangerous hitting a live gas line, hitting a live power line. Yeah. They're all very, very dangerous, and they're very costly. So I think I asked you this so do you think when they hit a live water line, and this thing is a big water, let's say it's a 6-inch high pressure water line, and it is gushing 20 feet high, you think they walk over and turn off the valve?
No.
You're right.
It's running through the city.
Because they don't know where the valve is. They didn't know. They didn't know that water line was there to begin with.
Where are valves for city water if it's going through like a sewage line now?
Yeah, that I don't know. Well, sewage and sewage and drinkable water are two different lines.
True.
But even if they hit a private line, someone's line that's feeding a building, they don't know whose line it is.
Yeah, or where to go in the building.
There's no label on the pipe. It says, oh, that belongs to Bob across the street. Yeah. There's no label. So it is chaos when they hit a live. Same thing with a gas line.
Yeah.
They don't know whose line it is. So this thing's, blowing out gas, and they're afraid this thing's going to blow up. So it's total chaos. Hitting a live power line, I mean, they take out power to multiple buildings. Well, now you're responsible for those buildings shutting down and their businesses being shut down. They can't operate their computer.
Businesses money because of your mistake.
Yeah, and you could get charged for that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of financial pain in hitting live utilities, and so people would almost pay us anything to find, locate, and identify those lines so that they wouldn't hit them during construction, and that's what we did. So that was the second business. The third one was we tested aerospace parts. We ultrasound them and X-rayed them, and we looked for flaws before those parts went into service. On airplanes, we worked on. We did stuff for SpaceX. It went on the rockets. We've done stuff that went on the space station.
Wow.
And then there's a lot of other stuff that isn't as exciting as that. Pressure vessels, high pressure valves that go into some service in some oil pipeline, or some gas line, or some high pressure steam line that can't fail or could hurt or kill somebody, that we would X-ray and ultrasound to make sure that it was sound before it went into service.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive.
So my question, you seem to be very successful in life. Where did you fail? And where was some failures that maybe you've had that, you know, maybe either paved a transition or a crossroad? Or so you hear a lot of people talking about their wins, not too many people talking about like failures that molded them into like what they are now.
Maybe some like vulnerable moments or you know, parts of your business. Yeah.
Do we have all night? Because that's what it would take to talk about my failures.
Michael only gives us an hour, but sometimes he'll do another one. He's like, we gotta get this man a book. Yeah. So you said something about you had a couple businesses and you started one the wrong way and you started one the right way, right?
Yes.
Why don't you touch up on that a little bit?
So that's one of my many failures. So there's multiple ways you can start a business the wrong way. My mistake on this particular situation was the aerospace business, the one that I just told you about. It took a lot of upfront capital. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment.
Right.
And I didn't come from that industry. I didn't have any contacts in that industry. I didn't know the industry.
Right.
But someone I'd hired for Koury said, hey, this is a really good industry over here. And I, you know,
you just jumped in.
I just jumped in, let's do it.
Nice.
And so I bought all this very expensive equipment, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I bought it on credit. So now I've got all these payments. And now I've got to set up an office with phone systems on credit, computers on credit. Then to have a radioactive source to do X-ray, there's a like a 300 page application that you have to send to the state of the capital of you know, Sacramento. The challenge with that is you have to have staff that are accredited to operate those machines and safety and a safety person. You have to pay all their salaries while you're applying.
And you're already buying what you bought on credit on top of that.
Jeez. So, and I'm paying.
Did you know that in the beginning, or are you figuring this out?
I'm figuring it out as I go, which is please do not do what I did. I'm sharing this with great embarrassment so that hopefully you will not do what I've done. And there's a great book, and it's called Good to Great. And I actually met the author, and they talk about that kind of mistake of they call it shooting a cannon when you should have just tried a BB gun first to see if it worked. So
like crawling before you walk.
It's exactly. Now that's one of the phrases they use: crawl before you
run.
walk before you run. And the utility locating business, I did it the right way. We bought one small piece of equipment for 20 grand. We were already doing well with Koury Engineering and turned around the aerospace business. So if it didn't work out, we could always sell the equipment. Maybe we sell it for 15 grand, we lose 5 grand, we move on. But we just bought one. It worked. We had enough business for it. We had a business for 2. Then we bought the second equipment because we let the business drive we let the revenue and the customers drive the purchase of more equipment as opposed to the other way around.
Okay.
And then but it took, so anyway, so here's, you know, there's what we all know what we don't know, right? Have you ever heard that expression? You know, we know we can't speak 100 different languages. Like, you know, I know I can't speak Spanish. I know I can't speak German. I know I can't do brain surgery.
Right.
But you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so the reason why I bring that up was I called Sacramento, the department that was going to review my application, the 300 page application. And I said, what's the review time right now? I mean, that's what you do. You check on these things.
Right. Follow up.
He said, yeah, 30 days. I'm like, oh, I could be up and running. I've got all the equipment. I've got the manpower, right? I sent in my application. Like 40 days goes by. I'm like,
oh no,
I got to call him. I call him. I'm like, how's my application going? Like,
I haven't even looked at it yet.
Yeah, they haven't looked at it yet. I'm like, how come? And they go, the state was having a budget crisis, so they cut out all overtime. And the person that was assigned to my application to review,
gone?
No, she was there, but she was raking in the overtime, and they cut it all out, but she has the same workload. What's really bizarre about this is the person right next to her could review it, but because they didn't sign up for that workload, they could be doing nothing. And
wouldn't matter.
It doesn't matter. They can't take her work away from her.
How'd you figure that all out?
I asked her.
And they just explained that to you?
Yeah. I said, can someone else look at it? And then she said, no, this is why.
Dang.
And she goes, I can only work 40 hours a week. I can't put any more time in this. And she goes, to be honest, Mr. Koury, it isn't helpful if you keep calling me. I said,
I got work to do.
Yeah, and I said, I understand. What time tomorrow can I call you? And I did. I kept calling and calling. I was nice. You know,
it's we preach follow up a lot. Money's in the follow up.
Money is in the follow up. And what's interesting was, slowly but surely, you know, you got to understand, 8 months went by.
And you're on credit.
And I'm on credit, and I'm paying all these salaries. People are like, my guys, you know, they're making 150,000 a year. I'm going broke. And they're like, we got nothing to do. You're not going to make it. Maybe, you know, we don't want to take your money. We're not working for it. So they wanted to quit. So I'm like trying to keep them from quitting. And I'm trying to, you know, because if they quit, my application's void.
And you don't have the people in place.
I don't have the people in place.
Dang.
Yeah. It was tough. It was more than tough.
How many sleepless nights did you have?
More than I can count. So guys, just to be clear on how stressful this was, I had some hair just above my right ear fall out from the stress. And I let the hair above it grow longer and just covered it. Yeah. And it was strictly from stress. I mean, I was like stressed out.
Almost like alopecia almost?
It wasn't almost, it was.
You were starting to get alopecia from the stress?
Yes.
Wow.
And so what's interesting is as the light started turning on, like, wait a minute. All right. I'm like, I'm here now. What can I get ahead of? And so I asked the question, I called the lady again. I can't remember her name right now. And I said, after you finish review, even though you're not there yet, what happens next? She goes, oh, then it goes to peer review. I'm like, how long does that take?
Is that where the city steps in or what?
No, this was the state.
Oh, okay.
So they send it, she gives it to peers, and they have to make sure she hasn't missed anything. I go, is there any chance you could?
300 pages.
Yeah. I go, is there any chance you could start the peer review now? I just threw it out there.
Yeah.
I thought she'd say, no, I have to finish my review first.
But it made sense.
Yeah. And she said, I can.
Wow.
I just took a shot. If you don't ask for something, you don't get it.
Right. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. What were we talking about earlier that we were like, we can try it, but worst case scenario, it doesn't work out. Versus not. Yeah. Oh, we're dealing with a house in Florida that needed more work than we thought, and hurricane came through. And my guy calls me up and says, hey, we can try FEMA and see if FEMA would maybe give us some money. He's like, do you want to call FEMA? And I'm like, what's the worst that's going to happen? They give us money, you know?
Sure.
Like, so what's going to happen if we don't call them?
Yeah,
Nothing at all. So I was like, yeah, try. Like, why not?
Sure.
So same concept. I like that. So
it's almost like the DMV in a larger scale.
I mean,
you know how they operate. Yeah.
It was brutal. Yeah, it was brutal.
I like that. So that's you staying on top of it and just being completely like consistent and persistent. I love that. Another thing that I liked is you're a big networking guy, right? I think when we had talked originally, you were very big on letting your company run itself because you like being a front-facing CEO.
Yes, forward-facing, customer-facing CEO. Yes.
Yeah. So which requires you networking a lot and meeting with people and having to discuss stuff. You want to touch up on that and what networking has done for you?
Sure. So, there's networking events in our industry. And, when I first went out there, I didn't know anyone. And it was, I'm just walking around trying to, figure things out.
Right.
And when you go to a networking event, there's typically 45 minutes to an hour before the event to network. Because once the network's over, people are out of there. There's usually a meal, whether it's a lunch or a dinner. As soon as they're done, if it's a lunch, they got to get back to the office. They got tons of, they got emails and things, phone calls to catch up on. If it's dinner, they're getting home, So that 45 minutes to an hour time is valuable. But I started going to these networking events, and I was like, you're walking around, you're like, oh, I don't want, that person's a vendor that sells carpet. They don't need engineering services.
Yeah.
And, so you're just like, kind of like, oh, I don't want to talk to them. And you're like ducking and hiding, trying to figure out who's who.
We don't do that. We talk to everybody.
Yeah. And the challenge is that, I paid money to go to these, and time is money. And, I figured, my time's worth, I did a calculation, it's worth $750 an hour. So if I don't get anything accomplished in that, I just wasted, $750 of my time, my valuable time, but I also didn't move the company forward.
Right.
Right. So I was like, there's got to be a better way, for in-person networking.
Right.
So I decided, let me take a shot. Went up to the front desk, and they have a list of all the guests and their titles, what companies they're with. So I said, do you mind if I look at that? Like, sure. But when people come, I'm going to need the list. So I went early, early, if no one was there. I was 30 minutes before anyone showed up. And I would look at this list. I'm like, I want to meet this person. I want to meet that person. Oh, I want to meet this person, that person, this person. And I'm like, when I walk up to them, it's going to be just a cold, meeting, even though it's at a networking event. How could I add some credibility to that? I said, so the president of the organization, whatever networking event, they're always at those events, the president of the organization.
Right.
And so I went up to the front desk again. I go, where's the president? Oh, he or she is, that's here. They're right there. I'll introduce you. I'd walk up, introduce myself to the president of the organization. And I said, I had the list. I go, I'd really like to meet these people. Can you introduce me? And their role is to do that.
Right.
They want the networking and the connections.
The whole purpose of the whole networking is
to network.
So that's like the creative REI meetups. We have these meetups, and the whole purpose is just to educate and connect. So if you can learn something there, or meet somebody that you can get some sort of value off of, the whole meetup was a success. So very similar. So it's like if somebody came up to me and said, hey, I need a guy who could do beach rentals.
Right.
I got a guy, right? So I like being the I got a guy. So same thing as these president of the organization.
Right. So they want to help you connect because that's their one of the roles.
Purpose,
That's their purpose. They want everyone to get value. They want the members or the people paying money to get value, so that they tell.
Wait, they charge?
So they can keep coming
We're
back.
free.
Right.
We don't charge nothing.
Yeah, they charge. And so then now I had the president of the organization introducing me.
Oh, wow.
And they're like, "Oh, hi!" And then now they took me way more seriously
because it's the
president has introduced me, and they're present. They're like, "Oh, okay," and so I made very fast connections that way, and I did that for years, to where I would go, into a room with 1,000 people, and I probably knew, 900 of them. I practiced their names. I took their cards, went back to my office. I made notes. I put it in my phone. I had notes in my phone. I got to know who they were. I immediately connected them on LinkedIn and sent them a nice message. And I did everything I could to remain, in their minds. And then I would reach out to them if they needed something, or I'd reach out to them to see if they needed something. They often needed, the utility locating was a huge hit. Yeah.
It's a really good approach.
I like that.
It was efficient.
Right.
It was very efficient.
Very. Yeah. Because I remember my first times, wasn't even that long ago. Going to my first meetups, people are talking about, it's real estate meetups, right? People are talking about ARVs and interest rates and this and that. And I'm like, this is like Chinese for me. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So I just kind of grabbed my phone, like, hey, I'm newbie, and it's a little intimidating, like I said. So
it's super intimidating, especially if you don't know the info.
Right. You kind of really don't know how to approach yourself. So I think, especially for the newbies or, people that want to get into specific industry or real estate, I think that's a really good approach to, go after and,
it was really efficient. And I walked away going, that was a great use of my time. I made some great connections. Now you understand, I'm not necessarily going to do business with them the next day.
Right.
Probably not.
You're planting seeds, though.
But I'm planting seeds with the locating business. That often brought us talking sooner rather than later, because they all have stories about hitting anyone who worked in construction, whether they're the CEO of a developer, all the C-suites, all the way down to the field guy, all have stories about their version of hitting utility and the chaos it caused.
Right.
So that was a great opener.
So it kind of comes up. As
and they always remember the name sea below subsurface imaging. And then I'd offer our engineering services. Oh yeah, we use that too. But now I had credibility, because one thing, number one, I was introduced by the president. Number two, they have a service that they're going to use, the utility locating business. And then when they see
especially developers.
Yeah. When they see the website and everything, they're like, man, this guy, yeah, he's got services I need. And they kind of get a feel how well we operate. And then they're like, well, maybe I should talk to him about our engineering services, because people have a lot of frustrations with engineers. They tend to be a different breed.
Right. But some of them are not people. They're not people persons. Yeah,
especially the ones that get doctorate degrees in engineering.
Doctorates.
Yeah. if they're into the technicality of it so much, they almost rarely have, and they don't have great purpose. They're into the numbers.
It's almost like the stereotypical nerd from school, right?
Yeah.
It's like timid.
That's ironic, because we had one come to one of our properties, and I was like, hey, we're gonna film some content. He was looking at my architect. My architect's like, sorry, I wasn't expecting this. It's like, it's okay, it's not gonna be anything bad, we're just gonna ask some questions, keep it simple.
But you'll be surprised how it benefited me in a lot of different ways. You and I were talking before this this sit down, and one of the ways it benefited me, one time I went to an interview for a project, because we sometimes have to interview. It was a public school, it was a college. They were building $125 million building. Our take on it was $3 million if we'd won. And I showed up with me and a couple other people, which was, to my understanding of doing hundreds and hundreds of these, standard.
Right.
And the people reviewing was we got, how much time we got?
We might roll a little bit over, Mike, but it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we still need to finish the 5 levers of real estate too.
Yeah,
I'd like to go down to that.
Yeah.
We got to 3.
Yeah.
But anyway, not only was the school district there, the administrators that were hiring us, but they had consultants. They're called project managers, construction managers. They were consultants though, and I knew all of them. And we interviewed. They literally had 5. I don't know why because they created a board, and they each one gave scores, right?
Right.
And then they tally up these scores, and they did that. And so anyway, I ended up a couple of days later going up to Sacramento for a 3-day networking event. And all those guys that were sitting behind the table interviewing us on the consulting side, the construction manager, project managers, they were there. And I saw one of them, and his name was Mike. I go, Mike, hey, how did we do at the interview? And he goes, sit down. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, what happened? And I knew when he told me to sit down, he was telling me bad news.
Yeah.
I said, what happened? He goes, you guys were great. He says, but everyone else is showing up with 8, 9, 10 people. I go, for what? What were all those? Because back, when I first started doing interviews, if you brought 10 people, they were like irritated. Why'd you bring all these people? We just want to talk to the head guy. It had all changed without me even knowing about it. Overnight, it just changed. And I said, well, what are all these people doing there? They said, they're there to show them this is our team. And each person told them what they were going to do for their project. Hey, I'm your billing person. I'm going to make sure your billing gets done on time, the time you need it. It's going to be accurate. I'm your quality control person. I'm going to make sure the content in your reports are accurate and legible. And, hey, I'm your field operations guy. I want to make sure you get great field people. They're going to work with your team. That's on, everyone went through that. And it was just me and like 2 other people. I didn't bring my team.
Right.
But what that did for me was I had another interview with another school district 3 days later when I got back from my
Your trip from
my
up
trip
north.
from Sacramento.
Yeah.
So I left that little impromptu, couch meeting in the lobby, and I called my team. I'm like, this is what's happening. We're going to assemble a team to our next one on Thursday. We're going to get in there and we're going to do that. We piled in with 9 people and they talked about the roles they were doing, what they were doing there. And we won that project.
So it worked. So essentially, you would just say you copy and pasted what everyone else was doing. It's almost, we
learned. But the thing is if I didn't have that relationship with those people,
you wouldn't have known to do that.
Yeah, because there was a time when I didn't know those people.
Right.
And if I was to run into them, the same scenario where I ran into them up north and they didn't know me and I didn't know them, and I go, hey, how'd I do? They would say, hey, I don't know. I'm just one guy. I scored my way. I don't know what the tally is.
Be willing to help
they
you
just
as much.
They just roadblock you. They just go, I don't know anything. I'm not the final decision maker. I don't know what happened. You'll have to wait and see what happened. They'll send you a letter.
Power of networking.
Yeah.
Do you ever
relationships?
Do you ever feel like you wasted your time networking ever, or no? Because I feel like even on days that's like, all right, maybe I didn't learn anything or I didn't meet anybody there. There may have been like a significant moment that maybe because if I had not showed up, I would have noticed. And I've heard somebody, I think it was Naaman Taylor. Shout out Naaman. This guy, he calls it dot connecting days, right? So every day you got your routine, right? And when you go to an event, it almost disrupts your routine. Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. But it's a dot connecting day. And for every time me and Ed have even flown out to go to some conference or a mastermind or something, those dot connecting days are huge for us because they translate.
They're huge for everyone.
Right. And so have you ever had a day where like you did go on a meetup and it didn't do anything? Because for us, that doesn't happen, huh?
Right.
Like ever.
Yeah.
It was the obscure networking events or that I went to and the people didn't show up.
Right.
Yeah, I've had that happen.
Like they just weren't there.
Either they didn't sign up and go, or they signed up and paid and did, or no shows.
Yeah.
So that is possible, but I would say that was fairly rare.
Okay.
It was fairly rare.
Okay. Yeah. Now going back to levers, right? We had income, we had appreciation and depreciation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's number 4?
Number 4 is leverage.
Leverage.
You get to use the bank's money.
We used you as an example on one of our episodes about how you had a mentor, 2 different mentors.
Yes.
And both
let him
of them.
Explain it.
Yeah, I'll let you. They probably heard us talk about it on another episode, but I'm going to let it come out of the.
So yeah, I have 2 mentors, and I strongly believe in mentorship. Why not learn from other people's mistakes instead of having to, do them yourself and lose the time and money and
save
anguish.
Yourself a lot of time
and money. And one is worth about $100 million. And one's worth well over $1 billion. They don't know each other. And I asked them separately, if you could do it again, what's the one thing you would do differently? They both gave me the exact same answer.
Wow.
They said, I wish I would have bought more. I wish I would have leveraged up more. Now, what they don't mean leverage up to 90%, of your property, leverage 110%. They're not talking about that.
It can mean multiple things. It can mean.
Yeah, they simply, I know the one that's worth $100 million, he only keeps, 20% leverage. That means, he's got debt of 20%. Now that he understands, he buys all on Hermosa Beach. Huntington Beach.
Yeah.
And the quality of the renters are so good there that you can count on them to pay the rent, he could have had much higher leverage, 50, 60%, and still been very safe.
Probably like 50, 60%.
And
you
still
don't have to
still have cash
70.
flow,
Yeah.
and he'd have a lot more property.
Because he could use that money towards
He could use the money that he put down on one property, he could use to buy 2 or 3 because he's using more leverage.
Right.
And he would have been worth 400 million, and the one that's worth $1 billion, he's got the same complaint.
Same mindset. Wish he would have leveraged more, even with $1 billion.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Same knowledge even goes for like knowledge, leveraging other people's experience and time.
Great point.
Right.
Great
that's
point.
something, mentorship will offer you that you won't really find anywhere else.
Yeah.
Do you do mentorship or any type of like courses?
I volunteer it.
Okay.
I definitely, I will, it was given to me freely.
You give it back.
I enjoy giving it back.
It pays back other ways. I feel like the energy's there.
Yeah. For me, it completes the circle of receiving, and to give and to receive. To me, it's a circle that I think,
it's like what goes around comes around. It's the energy.
Absolutely. So, so let's talk about the fifth lever. So
we've had income.
Yes.
Appreciation, depreciation, leverage.
Yes. Great recap. So those four are working for you 24/7 once you have rental property. Right. So the fifth one works when you sell a property, and this is how it works. Let's say you bought 20 years ago. I mean, you're probably like 10, but
16.
16. Okay.
I was
Yeah.
Ed wasn't born.
Let's say you bought $100,000 of Apple stock 20 years ago.
I know somebody who's done that.
Yeah.
And when it was like pennies before it bankrupted and did what it did with Jobs. Yeah.
Did it bankrupt? I know it went down to like $5.
It went super low. I think Jobs lost his company and then he got it back.
Yeah, they got rid of him and they brought him back.
Yeah.
And so you buy $100,000 worth of Apple stock 20 years ago, and let's say you bought a little 4-unit building for $100,000 20 years ago. Same person buys both these things. Okay. Now it's 20 years later. Let's just say, for the purpose of conversation, they're both worth the same amount of money. The Apple stock is worth $3 million. The building's worth $3 million. Okay. Now, and so he looks at his stock and he says, Apple's kind of peaked out. They're a blue chip stock now. I'm not going to see triple digit growth, the next 20 years. He doesn't think, let's say this person doesn't think that.
Right.
So I want to sell that stock. So his gain is 2.9 million because he has $100,000 cost basis, right? So you have to subtract that from your total per sale. So you've got 2.9 in capital gains, right? Well, now you have to and then you sell the building. You've also got a 2.9 capital gain. You have 3 million total because the $100,000 was yours originally in both. Right. But you have this 2.9 capital gain. Okay. Well, the stock, and you say you want to buy this other stock with it, or you want to buy a house, whatever you want to do with it. Doesn't matter if you want to buy more stock, another house, if you want to blow it on vacation. Either way, you've now got to pay tax on that $2.9 million. Right. At a 33%, if you live in California, it's 20% federal, 13.3% for California. Yeah. Let's call it 33.3%. You're gonna pay almost $1 million in taxes to the government. So now instead of having 2.9, you're now left with, let's call it 1.9. Right? You've lost $1 million. So now you're buying, instead of buying $3 million worth of stock, you're buying $1.9 million worth of stock plus your $100,000 that you started with. You're buying $2 million worth of stock instead of $3 million worth of stock. Right. So you're set back $1 million. Okay. Let's take the real estate. You don't pay that tax. You put it into what is called a 1031 exchange, which is a third party. And the IRS says, if you never possess the money, then you don't pay the tax on it.
It gets rolled into one house to another.
Well, another property, yeah. So you can so you put this into a registered third party. It's called a 1031 exchange. The IRS recognizes it, and then you tell the exchange, "Hey, I want to buy this property over here." They wire the money, and you pay zero tax on it. You're now $1 million up than you were on the Apple stock.
So Couple questions. I know about 1031s. We're just learning about them because one of the deals we're using right now, the guy has 1031 money. One, is there a point where you get to spend that money and it doesn't get taxed like after a certain age, or do you eventually just have to pay the taxes on it?
And unless, to my understanding, I mean, there's a couple of trick things you can do. You can always pass it down. You know, inheritance. After 11 million, I think, right as of today, I think they have to pay if the total assets are more than 11 million, they'll pay a death tax.
Okay.
They can put it in a trust.
Yeah.
And so let's say it was me. If I put it in a trust, and then there's a beneficiary to that trust, and the trust will pay out a certain amount of money to the beneficiary whatever I designate. Let's say I say
that's non-taxable
to my son. Well, it's. I believe the money they take out will be taxable, but the money that stays, as income. But I believe the money that stays in is not taxable. But for simplicity, at some point, if you want to spend it while you're alive, you'll probably pay the tax.
Right.
I mean, there's always some trick ways to get around it. I've heard of them over the years. I can't recall them.
You eventually have to pay it. It just prolongs it.
But what I found is, I've talked to people that are in their 70, 80s, and they're healthy, and they're like, yeah, so I got $30 million. I'll have to pay 10 million in taxes. I still got 20 million left.
Yeah.
I'm 75, 80.
They've already lived a full life.
I'm
like,
fine.
so what?
I got my house. I got my car. I'm not gonna even spend the 20 million. They're not gonna go out and buy a jet. You know, they don't need it. They
probably did all that stuff already.
Yeah, they've lived their life, and they're like, I don't care. I just want the money in the bank. I don't want the headaches of calling a plumber to fix a leak, or
It's never have to. So I used to sell phones and an AT&T store, and I would get these older people come in, and they'd be like, my bill went up $5. I'm like, yeah, you got a late fee. And they're like, well, I can't afford this. I'm on a fixed income. And I used to and I'm not trying to down these type of people, but I would look at them and be like, I never want to be like you when I'm that age. The being, so what you're saying essentially, these guys don't have to worry about that. They got the money to spend. If they got to pay a plumber, if they got to pay a $5 late fee.
Yeah.
You got
to understand if today, at this particular point in time, if they took that 20 million and put it into T-bills, I think they can get up to 5.2% in a money market mutual account. They can live off the interest alone.
Yeah. Depending on how, their living expense is,
Yeah. Usually 75-year-old people are not living too high on the hog, or most people who are entrepreneurs like that have, 3 to 5 different sources of income anyway.
Right. Safe to say you had a little fast life, a couple Ferraris, a couple watches at one point.
Yeah. I've done all that. And it was, I got to tell you, it was fun.
Yeah.
I back when the 458 came out, I've had 4 of them.
Four of them. Nice.
Every year.
What we call post luxury now.
What is
post luxury?
What do you mean?
So you got pre-luxury and post-luxury. So post-luxury is you've already done all the stuff. It was fun. You got out of the system. Now it's all right, I've done it.
Yeah, I've been there and done that. And I just don't, when I was a kid, I valued Tonka toys. I always wanted a Tonka toy. Are they still around?
Tonka Hot Wheels almost?
Yeah, no, Tonka toys are around. They're like the big dump trucks.
But when you get older,
kids who want to be in construction.
You get older and you're like, oh, I don't want those toys. I don't care about toys anymore. And I'm like, I don't care about those. If I could take it all back and buy real estate,
you'd rather do that.
I'd rather do that. I bought my house in Newport Beach. It's gone up 600% since I bought it.
Nice.
How long
have you been there? You've been there for
25 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, do you mind me asking how much you bought it for 25 years ago?
Yeah, $539,000.
Wow.
That's still expensive.
Yeah, it was a dump.
Yeah,
it was a dump.
$500,000 to live in Newport Beach 20 years ago.
25 years ago. 1998, yeah. I
think my grandmother bought her house 40 years ago for $30,000.
Yeah, so I think about, if I took, I mean, my car payments for those Ferraris were $4,400 a month.
Yeah. That's like
that's
more than
well over
somebody's
50.
rent. That's like 3 rents in Alabama.
It's over 50 grand a
Right.
year, it's over plus my down payment and stuff, 20 grand down payment. And if I take those and I, put a down payment on an apartment.
Yeah. Could have been the same thing.
I know people bought an apartment for $1 million, and 7 years later it's worth $2 million while they're collecting rents and getting the write-off. And
but do you think that, having those cars, was it like, what would you call it? Did it ever like bring new opportunities to you? Did,
the cars?
Right.
We got friends who do the exotics too, and they call them lead gen tools.
Right. They have people,
Could you agree
presenting
with that?
themselves like, oh, I do this, or what do you guys do?
I didn't, I wasn't broadcasting, live
right.
on Facebook Live or whatever. I was just chasing girls, and,
These girls with the lead
so
gen.
it did create those opportunities, but
How'd it go when the girls got in the car? You used to tell, are you okay with that, or no? You want to pass? We don't have to. We don't have to.
I mean, it was a different time, but
all right, we'll save that for the private moments. You want to get to know Rich? Maybe he'll tell you one day.
Yeah.
Can I honestly say too? This was kind of like a big moment for me when you and I when we first met. We went to go have lunch.
We'll pull up the picture.
We're gonna put, I'm gonna have Mike put the picture up. But I don't think you realize this, but we were sitting in front of the project housing that I grew up in as a Section 8 kid. And while you're talking, showing us all this stuff, I'm looking at this apartment complex and I got almost like tears in my eyes because I'm like, dude, I'm like having $1 million conversations right now.
Come a long way.
And I'm not even done yet, but it was one of those gratitude moments like, damn. And we actually, so that's why I had Carmen take a picture, because I was like, I got to get this because I low key want that complex. I want that complex. I'm gonna figure it out. I don't know how, but
it's still kind of run down. I feel like
it's okay. It's all right though. It's more of like the principle for me. But the idea that we were sitting there having these high level conversations in front of that place, I think was not too. It wasn't by mistake. You know what I mean?
It wasn't by accident.
Yeah, it wasn't by accident. What did I say, by mistake?
Mm-hmm.
But
I knew what you meant.
You're right. So, but okay. So retracting, we have income, appreciation, depreciation,
leverage.
1031.
Yeah,
would be fair to say.
Yeah.
Okay. So avoiding taxes legally. Okay. And number 6, leaving the people, with number 6 being what?
No, there's 5.
You said there's a 6th one.
No.
Oh, it's when you sell. Is that equity?
No, there's 6. There's 5. Sorry, you got me saying 6.
Oh, I thought there's 4
5
that work every day, and there's 5 when you sell.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
what
it. Yeah.
Awesome,
my man. Okay, Richard, where can people find you? Do you have an Instagram? He's not really online. He's just a private guy.
Just a personal one. Yeah, I mean, I've got Surf City Rentals for my vacation rentals. They can go there. I'm on
Surf
IG
City
for Surf City Rentals and Facebook, and you can see some of the nice product that we put.
Have you ever spoken on stage as like a keynote speaker?
I've spoken at some events, some
like in front of
industry
people,
events,
like 200 or 300 people type stuff, or
I mean, my Christmas party was with 250 people with their spouses there. We had 500 people there. It's like,
but those are coworkers, so it's like there's like mental.
Well, still, but it's like you're standing up together and going,
it's nervous. Yeah,
I better not say anything, stupid up here.
How much did you drink? Did you drink to like the nerves?
I don't care for alcohol. I don't care for it much. I probably have one drink a year.
Yeah,
that's good.
I just don't care for
staying healthy.
Yeah.
We did mention that you're saying when you start working on the inside, everything else kind of starts working with it. I like that you told me that. You said it starts with the inside.
Absolutely. The more issues I resolved within myself, the better leader I became, but the better business owner I became, the better I think the clients saw it. And I remember not being very accurate when I spoke when I was younger, which is a common issue among younger people, just because they just talk loose because it's just natural, but it can come across as almost accidentally being a little dishonest,
right?
and it really wasn't my intent, but I didn't like how it looked, and a couple people called me on it, and I'm like, well, I don't want to look dishonest when I'm not dishonest. So I started, looking at it, going, you know what, a lot of people will tell even white lies to not hurt someone's feelings, and I'm not against that, but I wanted to draw a hard line and practice it. And I didn't know what I had no end game of the outcome other than I just wanted to be able to say, I'm an honest person with integrity, like know it without even saying it. Right. And what's interesting was, so I got put in situations where they'd ask me a question. There was a friend of mine who was getting married, and I was in his wedding party, and he called me the night before, and he said, every bone in my body every joint in my body is aching right now. Am I making the right decision?
Right, the day before his wedding?
The night before. It was like 9.
Dang, so we're doing all this for nothing right now, or?
And the reality was, he wasn't marrying the right person. But he's asking me a direct question.
Like, am I making a good decision right now?
Yeah. And so here I came, face to face with having integrity, telling the truth.
Yeah.
And probably losing a friend. I was going to be in his wedding.
Yeah.
And like, what do I do? So I didn't answer the question.
At all?
No,
because didn't respond. You just stay quiet.
No, because you got to understand. I wasn't trying to get out of anything, but I couldn't tell him the truth. This is why. It's the night before his wedding. He's going to get married no matter what I say.
Right.
Okay. And so, do I tell him the truth? He gets married anyway, and then he disowns me.
Right.
Because because I told him the night before his wedding he's making the wrong decision.
You'd rather just not say anything at all then?
Yeah. So I just said, and I wasn't 100% sure she wasn't the right person. I mean, I'm not omnipotent. I'm not God. Right. It was just an opinion. Right. I can definitely be wrong. So I just said, I haven't been married. I was single at the time. I said, I imagine a lot of people have this before they get married.
Yeah.
And I said, all I know is I'm going to be standing there right behind you right there tomorrow. I'm going to be there. Hang in there. And I just left it alone. I mean, to me, I felt like I did the best I could by sticking to my integrity and not lying. And yet, and by not answering the question, he put me in a tough spot. He doesn't realize it wasn't his intention to put me in a tough spot. He knew he was marrying the wrong person. That's why he called and asked me.
I mean, the feeling, the aching and the feeling, I feel like the vibes don't lie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he knew. He had gotten many, many signs before that. Because, I've had, before I got married at 50, I was single for 50 years. And every one of those ones I didn't marry, I knew, if I married him, they'd be the wrong ones.
Yeah.
This guy is literally a rocket scientist. He's a smart guy.
Like literally.
He's a very intelligent guy. So, he already knew. So how helpful was I going to lose a friendship over it? But I didn't want to lie. I didn't want it. So that's what I did. But oftentimes, because I didn't do or did do something, and I get asked if I did it, and I know it's going to get me in trouble, I tell the truth for two reasons. I want to stick to who I want to be, and the pain of whatever that's going to cause, the truth of that, or I didn't do something I was supposed to do, or I did something I wasn't supposed to do, forces me to be a better person. And I didn't know this was going to happen, but over the years, my sales team, when they'd get a client, they go, "Hey, go meet our new client." They're like pushing me, all of them. And I never really knew why. It's good business. I knew it was good business, so that's why I did it, and that's why they wanted me to do it. But one time, I'd come back and they're like, "Oh, I spoke to our client. You went to lunch with him today. They said you're a really honest guy." And they go, "We hear that a lot, and that's one of the reasons why we want you to go see the clients, because you're a personal guy, and and people trust you." Right. And what I realized is, when you really work on your integrity and you really work on being honest, it comes out in your pores. I didn't go to lunch with this client, and say, "I'm a real honest guy." You don't talk about it.
His actions speak louder than words.
It's just, you just are. It's just a being, right? So I really felt good that the hard work that I put in of working on my honesty, paid off. Right. And I didn't know it would have that benefit, that it would come out through my pores, as I like to say. Right. I didn't know that would be a benefit from that when I started down that journey. I think
it still comes down to the vibes don't lie. And I think in nowadays, people, I think, are a lot more in tune to vibes these days. We call it vibes, energy, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But you can just tell, like, I've been in a situation and I'm like, this doesn't feel right. Let's go be somewhere, right? Or you meet somebody and they might come off super nice and smiling, but you're like, there's just something about this person that I just
you can feel it.
Yeah, the vibes don't lie. I'm always like very big on the vibes don't lie.
Yeah, and in old school way, it just comes out in their pores.
Right. So you're saying comes out in the pores is the same thing as the vibes.
It's the vibe. Yeah.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed Richard Koury as much as I enjoyed talking to him. This guy was kicking mad gems.
Definitely. I feel like we should do a part 2. Like,
maybe. I think we should do you know what we should do is we should get you in front of the triplex and before and after and turn that into a whole thing.
That would be fun.
We're going to get this guy online more because people need to know who this guy is. We're working on it right now. He's being shy right now. But we're going to talk to him.
Especially with the mentorships. I feel like a lot of viewers want to, get to meet and, essentially hear from someone like you with your experience.
Whether it be for like 2 days. It doesn't have to be but we'll work on it. But do you have anything you want to leave with the people before we end it all? Or
I just enjoyed the time with you guys.
Thank you, sir.
I enjoyed.
Appreciate you coming, man, because I know you're busy. You're super busy. So
no, it was great. I enjoyed the experiences, and my hope is that at least one of the stories, if it helps save someone some amount of grief, time, and money, that would give me the most immense joy. I couldn't tell you how much that would make me feel, how good that would make me feel if I knew that. Awesome. Yeah.
So that's the purpose of these. Yeah. What's your Instagram? Because we're big on Instagram, so we feel like a lot of people are gonna probably start following you after they see this. You're gonna get followers. That's just what it is.
You can either follow Stellar Stays with a Z, or surfcityrental.com.
Okay, so not the personal.
Well, my personal is there's not much.
People are gonna find you though. So it's good looking. I was like, all right, he's connected to this. Okay, so Surf City Rentals.
Surf City Rentals.
Okay, and then Stellar Stays. Yeah, guys, awesome. I appreciate y'all tuning in. We are out. That was good.